So it was at the end of this tour. It was a long tour. It was 14 hours. Left at like 6:30 a.m. Ended up getting back around 8:30 p.m. Um, and obviously, like even though this is one of my goals, I had no intention of bringing up the Armenian genocide while I was in Turkey. That's just not something that you do. Um, and when I wanted to learn about kind of what happened here, then I didn't really have kind of any idea what that meant. I didn't know what that would involve, because what could it involve? This is a country that completely denies that it happened. It's not like there's any evidence lying around. It's not like, obviously there's no museums or memorials or anything like that. But I wanted some. I mean, the real tragedy of it in my mind was just that the memory of it was so stamped out. It was so hard for those people to keep the memory of this national tragedy, one of the horrors of the 20th century, like one of the all-time worst events. It was so hard for them to even keep that alive, keep the memory of what happened alive. And I wanted to just see what it was like in a country where where I wanted to see what the stamping out was like. Um, I wanted to get a sense of it, like in person. So I didn't plan on bringing this up. It was 12 hours in. We're on the drive home, and I saw a chance to kind of. It was the next logical step in the conversation, and I was only, it was either say something about it or kind of keep quiet. And the tour was about the Ottoman Empire. It was kind of just like this general thing, but the tour guide on the way back, he was talking politics, and he was getting really heated about something, and he brought up something that he was upset with America about. He was upset about something Biden did, and he was talking about how it's gonna sour the relations between Turkey and the U.S., which have been good in the past. And it had to do with this arms deal. Had to do with America supporting these Kurdish groups. So it didn't have to do with the genocide in particular. But I was like, okay, this is an opportunity to bring it up in a way which is kind of innocent and just it's the next step in the conversation. So I said, was it a big deal here that Biden, commented on the Armenian genocide, that he kind of validated it, that he took a stance that it happened and that was genocide. And my tour guide dismissed it outright, and he said he didn't dismiss the genocide. He dismissed my point that I was bringing up. He said, no, leave that for the historians. That doesn't matter at all. He said the only reason he was only doing that to satisfy like the rich Armenians in Los Angeles. Strange comment, and then he dropped it. Okay, so I thought that's kind of where it was going to end. Conversation went on. He was talking about. We started talking about the Uyghurs, and the Uyghurs call themselves they're part of China. They want to be East Turkestan, and Turkestan is kind of their name for themselves. They are a Turkish people, and my tour guide was saying that when he's talked to Uyghurs, then when they talk slowly, he can actually understand them because the languages are similar enough. So he mentioned offhand. He said, the area where you're staying, the area where your hotel is, there's a lot of Uyghurs there. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of people in that area. There's Uyghurs, there's right next to your hotel, there's an Armenian hospital. So okay, so maybe I can say something. And so I said, oh, so are there still a lot of Armenians in Turkey? And he goes, oh yeah, there's tons of Armenians, And I'm not sure if he's going to continue with it, but he goes on to say. He starts talking about how, let me actually just kind of read through. I tried right after the conversation, I tried to kind of keep track of all of his main points. So I'm just going to go briefly kind of what he said. He went on kind of a rant. Okay, so First thing he talked about was he was saying, the Armenians in America, they don't care at all about the Armenians in Armenia. And he was saying, like, look what happened during the war with Azerbaijan. The Armenians in Armenia, they're asking for help for the Americans, and the American Armenians didn't help them at all. And he was saying, I have a friend in Yerevan who called his relative in America, and the guy hung up the phone. So he was characterizing them as like not caring at all, which doesn't seem true, He then went into this thing. I thought that was, again, where it was going to stand. He didn't really seem like he wanted to talk about it, but he seemed okay talking about it. He just he wasn't going to dwell on it. But then he kind of says, since I brought up the genocide earlier, he said, it wasn't the Turks who did the Armenian genocide. And I said, oh really? And he said, I said, so it was the Kurds, and the Kurds were involved. And he said it was the Kurds and the Russians, but the Armenians in America, they're the ones who started this whole thing, to blame it on the Turks, and the only reason why they're doing it is because they want money. Okay. He then started talking about how he was saying, my grandmother's Armenian, and she said the whole thing was a lie, and she always told us the whole thing was a lie. And like, she's proof. She stayed around, and she had a story to tell, and she said it wasn't the Turks who did it. It was the Russians. The Russians were the ones who killed everyone. Then he says, and the real genocide. This is something which I learned recently, and it shocked me. He said, and the real genocide. The Armenians killed a lot of Turkish people too. There were Armenians massacred thousands and thousands of Turkish people, and who talks about that? Okay. So he had a few different kind of chunks in this conversation. I want to just isolate a few points, which stood out in my mind as like kind of three things which I guess I would say, like, this is kind of how you know that this kind of delusion is taking hold. It was three elements, three very telling elements, that made his whole story just suspicious. Not about the story itself, but about the kind of the way he was expressing it. So the three elements that stuck out to me. One is exaggeratedly cynical, like, talk about motives. And it's like so cynical that it's to the point of projection. So the first thing, he kept talking about American Armenians and how lazy they were and how they just want money. And he was saying, so this is the progression. He says, the whole Armenian genocide thing, it's not real. The whole thing is just about money. The whole thing is just about money. Nothing really happened, and they're just trying to get money. But the way he started, he was saying, so the first thing was that they didn't care about the other Armenians during the war. Then he said, it's not just that, they don't care about anything. They're lazy. And it's not just that they're lazy, it's that they sit around America just looking for handouts. They don't want to work, they don't want to do anything. Armenians in America, they just don't work, And it's not just that they want handouts, it's that they want money from Turkey. And then he said, it's not just that they want Turkey, or money from Turkey, it's that they want their land back. Okay? So, for people who don't know the history, Western Armenia was in Turkey. That was a part which is historically Armenia. And Turkey took that land away. And that was part of the point of the genocide, that they took the Armenians off their own land. They dispersed them, and they killed them, and that land became Turkey. So it's not just that the American Armenians are lazy; it's that they want money, and they want Turkish land, projection. He also was talking about how they don't want to discuss it. He talked about this whole thing with this forum where historians could interact, and Armenians didn't want to participate. And he said, "Oh look, when Turkish historians are invited to talk with Armenian historians in this kind of setting, then the Armenians don't want to talk. They're hiding something, projection." And the second element, so the first element was that cynical talk about motives to the point of projection. Second thing was contradictions. Okay, so it was interesting. He was talking about how he was criticizing American Armenians for not helping during the war, and then he started talking about Turkish Armenians, and he said, and I said, oh, so did they help during the war? He said, no, they don't help. They're Turkish. They're loyal to Turkey. So even if it was true that American Armenians were loyal, were not helping, it's not that they're loyal to America. It was that they're just lazy. Another thing was he was talking about how we were talking earlier about Kurdistan and the independence movement on their part. And he's talking about how it's crazy that the Kurds just want to take our land. Turkey has never taken land. And then he mentions right after that, we're talking about Van, and he's saying the city Van. He says, "Oh, that city I told you about, it used to be the capital of the old Armenian kingdom." So he's bringing up the fact that this place that used to be Armenia was is now Turkey. And the whole thing is crazy that it's just plain wrong. The Ottoman Empire, you're going to say that they didn't take land. You're saying no, Turkey never takes land. And he also said this interesting thing. He said the Armenian historians, it's like they say they don't want to talk about it. They just know the truth, and you can never say that they know the truth. Next words out of his mouth, he said, "There's only one truth, and it will come out soon that it was all a lie." Okay, so once again, it just his whole rhetoric was full of contradictions. So that shows a different type of kind of malicious delusion. When not just the projections come out, but all these contradictions come out. And then the last thing, which I feel like this is the classic like kind of diluted denial progression. So Armenian genocide didn't happen, but if it did, they deserved it. Okay, so that's that's the fallacy. So his thing was it didn't happen. It's the whole thing is a lie. If it did happen, it wasn't the Turks. It was the Russians. And even if it was the Turks, then the Armenians were the ones who killed the Turks. The real genocide was against the Turks. So if we killed a bunch of Armenians, then they deserve it. Yeah. So that was pretty much the conversation. Oh, and then one more thing, which was also kind of telling. I asked the only other thing that I pushed. And I didn't push it. I just brought it up. I just wanted to see what he would say. I said, a name that you hear a lot with the Armenian genocide. You hear about this group, the Young Turks. Who are the Young Turks? And he said, oh, they were something else. He said at that time Turkey wasn't very educated. They were just a group of educated Turks. For people who aren't familiar, the Young Turks were the ones who, it was this kind of revolutionary party, and they were the ones who kind of were in charge of the genocide. They're the ones who carried it out, in 1915. So this was the group, the equivalent of the Nazis. Who were they? Oh, they're just a bunch of academically, they're just a bunch of academics. Didn't mention it all. And this is while we were talking about the Armenian genocide. It's not like he thought I was asking just kind of in a general way. This is during the conversation. Who are they? They were something else. Yeah. So that was what it looked like. That was kind of, I wanted to see what, I never talked to someone who, was denying something, was denying a historical fact out of this, like, a nationalism or, whatever it was. And I wanted to see what it looked like, and that's what it looked like. And it really centered around those, it's centered around those elements, those three elements. That it was the cynical to the point of projection, contradictions, and it didn't happen, but if it did, they deserved it.